Now it's over 2.7 wide, down to just over 1 mil. Just kind of liking the thickness of that as an under bezel. We'll lose a little bit of thickness from working on it, and then also the depth. We're going to curl around that way and then turn it up, so when we turn it into a circle we get that nice sort of cup shape. So you know how to do this, you've seen it on my channel before. Hold at the end with your half round pliers, round a bit towards you, lock it into your peg, get your parallel pliers, mine are over by the rolling mill, excuse me. And then we're just levering it on that edge. It's that corner of your pliers, that edge of your half rounds. There you go. We'll just keep going until you've got enough to turn up for your stone, and then I anneal it and tighten it up, tighten up the curve a little bit. But you don't need to go mad with this. There you go, that's what I got. You don't need a lot. I mean, I've done way too much, but I just kept going until I liked the curve. I like sort of that section in there. But yeah, it's not even going around the outside of the stone, it's going around sort of halfway down it, so you only need a little bit really. I think it's quite important to keep your curve even, otherwise you end up with one side, once you turn it up into a circle, if the curve is uneven, you've got a bit of a flat spot and then a tight curve, you can have one side of the collet kind of vertical and the other side bending right down. It's going to be odd, so it's quite important to get that curve nice and smooth. And obviously work to your stone, make sure you get it the right size. This is massive. The way it sits in there just like that, around about the size I want. It's all hidden behind the girdle. I want to line it up in there. Tapped it, filed the top and bottom, went around it, filing the outside, give it a paper, get it nice and smooth. This whole thing is made of scraps of metal I found in my scrap box. There's a bit of wire, it's just about long enough. Call it 1.2. I want it a bit heavier than the claws on that, just because that makes sense to me. Looks really big on the side, but I'm going to phrase into that, so it's soldered on nice and strong and looks good. Same as earlier in the video when I was talking about marking them out. For this one, I recommend quite strongly you start on the solder joint, because that way, if your claw's directly over the solder joint, you've got no worries about a line showing up when you're polishing it, which you'll be doing before it gets soldered in position in there. What I do is I start them off with a saw cut. Also, what's nice with that, you can turn it upside down and have a look at it and check your accuracy, see if you like where your claw's going to go. They do tend to look different, like one side might look alright, and another way it looks kind of wrong. So rotate it and have a look at it at all angles, and see if it needs improving anywhere. A cylinder phrase. Just started one off, just looking at it from the side. Get your wire for your claw, put it in the groove to check I'm not going too deep. The stone sat in there horizontal on a bezel. It's not quite touching, so I'm going to go a little bit more. My angle for my claw is going to be the same as that angle there. Just got to go into it, but it's not the end of the world if you've got to get it correct on a stone. If you've got to phrase it out a little bit more towards the top half, or a little bit more the bottom half, just to change that angle a little bit, that's not the end of the world. You're allowed to do that, as long as it's not too extreme. Yeah, and just go in until it's sort of touching the stone, and the stone, you can phrase out the under bezel a bit so the stone drops down, and because of these, the claws are going inwards. As it drops down, you'll need to cut into the claw more to set the stone. Do you know what I mean? Like, as it gets lower, it's going to come down closer. So I think it's nice just to get it touching the stone now, or even lifting the stone up ever so slightly, and then as it's set, it will be clipped in nice and snugly, and the claw will not need to be bent over. I really hate that look. It just, to me, it just looks like someone didn't know what they were doing when they made it and made it all the wrong size. So it's nice if the claw just sits perfectly straight and the stone is set well. Okay, I did it. I marked them out with a 1mm, just open them up with a 1.2mm phrase now. It's a good job, I did actually make a few adjustments on them. So you can mark them out absolutely perfectly, but then you still need to be able to cut them in that position. And where these cylinder phrases and things drag one way, you can start accidentally pulling things about. I think we got it now. Obviously, just got to make them all the same angle, all the same size in the correct positions. So I've just holded my claw in position against the bezel with tweezers, got the toggle on there, just gently squeezing the tweezers closed. When you do this, look at it from that way, make sure, because you've got a nice straight bit of wire there, just have the minimum amount hanging over the bottom. Be careful, it's been snipped, you've got that flat edge, you don't want that ruining the side of your claw, so make sure all of the snipped kind of angled bit is over the edge. Yeah, holding that in position, and then that needs tweaking that way a little bit, just to hold it so it's dead straight, and then that is ready for soldering, and I will literally just balance that in there, solder it in there, this way obviously. There you go. Solder that in position. And I know a lot of jewelers, I've seen them on YouTube, so like big channels, they snip off all the claws individually. I don't like doing that. And they don't even look like a straight bit of wire sometimes. Really got to have straight wire, and I like it like this because less wastage. You're wasting the minimum amount because you can see exactly what you're wasting off the bottom, and then you can, once this is soldered on, I'll put the stone in position and then just cut it off exactly the right length. If you cut them out individually, there's a chance you're making them way too long, or you might balls up and make them too short, which is a total waste of wire. Do it this way, just do one individually. It's the minimum wastage and the most sensible way to go. So I just soldered that on. My advice is have it held in tweezers like I did. Put your solder there, like on top of the bezel, and then try and pull it across, and it should flood from there. If you're heating it from this side, it should hopefully just flood down each side of the claw. Mine did, but I didn't add quite enough, so I'm just going to put a little bit more, and it should flood down the sides, and then you want to be looking underneath it as well, make sure it's flooded around the bottom. You can see mine is sitting flat, claw is just touching, so when the stone drops down it will be set quite nicely, and then also you can't see it from the top. So that's what I'm aiming to do on all four claws. So checking your angles, yeah. Tilt it towards you like that, so we're moving it this way until it's completely flat to your eye, and then rotate it so the one in front should be exactly blocking the one behind it while it's dead straight and dead in the middle. That's how you're checking they're both the same. Then obviously from the side you want these angles the same, and this claw's a bit longer so it might throw your eye off a little bit, but I'm quite happy with these angles. Okay, third claw. That solder joint was delicious. Look how neat that is. Just like a little beaded edge. Both sides, and flooded underneath around the claw. But anyway, you've got to check angles. So again, see, rotating it this way to make sure the top is and the bottom are flat, make sure it's directly facing you. And you rotate it, and that claw in front of it, they should sort of get that, what's it called? Equinox? Horizon. Eclipse. There you go. Yeah, you should have an eclipse of the claw directly over it. Perfectly parallel, horizontal, whatever the words are. Another mathematical words that I don't know. And also go in, making sure it's directly up and down vertical, and directly in the middle of the other two. Making life easy for myself, always trying to be accurate. If you phrased it wrong and then you had to hold the claw out at a wrong angle, and then solder it, it's more likely to fall off and be a problem when you're soldering the other claws as well. Like, I'm able to make things like this in silver because all the parts are sort of seated in nicely in their position. If you're kind of filling gaps with solder, it can get very messy very quickly. Like you're trying to heat something up next to it and it'll just fall off. Just want to show you this. If you're struggling to get your claws in the correct position, watch this. Pick that up. Pick that up. Tweezers. Boom, correct position. If you're struggling to get your claw in the correct position, it's because your previous steps, you've done them inaccurately. You just need to work more carefully. It's not the end of the world if you need to adjust that. You just, obviously if mine's clicking in position and sitting like that, I can just phrase it out a little bit more. Being very careful not to keep going deeper and deeper, always just adjust it how you want it, but don't push the phrase right in, otherwise you're just going to go in more and more and more, and then you're ruining it another way by trying to correct it another way. So yeah, I've said it before on my channel, I make life easy for myself by at every step working accurately and constantly testing it as well. I don't just make it till I'm happy with it and then I don't look at it again. Like keeping everything in mind and double checking things over and over. Like even now, like looking at the other claws, like checking I still like the angles they are. Because you can have 4 claws on here and I may have got to this stage thinking everything's great, but then you get one claw that's slightly out and it can ruin the whole thing, and it's quite difficult sometimes to actually spot what's making it look wrong. So that's my main tip, is just work accurately, always work accurately, and slow right down until you can get it right. So the back, I'm gonna file it flat. Be very careful with your claws. Should probably cut them short first. Give me a bloody file that works. This one's so new I haven't even put a handle on it. How's that? Cat just saw itself on camera for the first time. I always rotate it when I do this, just to make sure, to protect myself from myself, because you tend to push the file this way or this way. It's actually quite a difficult thing to hold it perfectly flat. So you can even push that way a little bit on purpose and then just rotate it around, doing the same. There you go. So that, when it's filed up as well, that shows up any inaccuracies quite severely, quite unforgiving. So obviously if one claw's in more than the other, it's going to really show up at this stage. Another thing where these templates are handy, if you've got circles with the 4 points drawn in, not only are they useful for actually putting your initial markings on a piece, you can double check your accuracies on things as well. So to tidying up this bit, put your stone in, just double check, just have another look before you cut a claw down. But basically you're going to cut them all down, giving yourself a bit of extra length to make setting them a bit easier, and then also, but not leaving them too long that you're just wasting metal. And not too short obviously, because that's no good. So I always just put a mark, I put the stone in, and I put a mark on one, and then cut them all down to the same height. I always find the paper discs are best for this. You just look at them from the side and then just match them up. It's not too important, they've got to be really identical, but it makes sense to get them all the same-ish. I don't measure them just by eye, they've got to be the same. I'm going to give that little centre collet a bit of attention, give a bit of love. making sure there's no little lumps of solder anywhere, any awkward little file marks. Be careful when you're putting your files on it, you don't want to end up putting a nick in a claw. Okay, my soldering is super neat, if I do say so myself, but still can improve it with a rubber wheel. Rubber wheeling the solder line away, gets it really sharp, and then after polishing it'll just look really crisp and nice. Bit of a lump on this one. It's a real delicate operation to cut it sharp but not cut too much away. Done. Mini whizzer. A rat tail file somewhere, it doesn't get used very often, it's all dusty, but now it's going to come in well handy just for making that round in there. Et voila. So there's my centre collet.